The first red flag wasn't Preston's smug little smirk. It was the fact that the email summoned her to the HR office at 7:58 a.m. with no subject line and the word ASAP typed in all caps like a panicked toddler trying to play grown-up. Sloane hadn't even finished her second houndstooth coffee after fighting I-35 traffic when she walked in and saw the kid already perched in her usual chair like he owned the air in the room. Preston Blake, all 28 years of entitlement, squeezed into a slim-fit blazer and overpriced haircut, didn't even look up when she entered. Just tapped a pen against his teeth like he was waiting for Postmates, not about to gut the heart of Apex Ledger Group. "Sloane," he said, drawing out the name like it offended him. "Thanks for coming in early. We'll keep this brief." Victoria, the spineless HR rep, sits tight in the corner like a hostage, no eye contact. That's when Sloane knew she didn't need the speech. Of course, Preston gave it anyway. After reviewing departmental efficiencies, he began, using a phrase he definitely read off LinkedIn that morning. "We've concluded your role has become non-essential. We're streamlining legacy costs and bringing in fresh perspectives. Effective immediately, you're relieved of your duties." He actually smiled like he just solved world hunger by axing the woman who kept this entire quantitative analytics operation from collapsing into flaming chaos. Sloane didn't flinch, no begging, no angry monologue. She just adjusted her blazer, slid the company-issued laptop across the table like she was handing him a dead goldfish, and stood. "Streamline this," she muttered inaudibly, just for her, and walked out with more grace than he'd ever earn. It's funny. You work somewhere for 15 years, bleed into the cracks of its foundation, clean up its messes, save its ass during every merger panic. One kid with a business degree and daddy's password can erase you before 9 a.m. And hey, before I forget, if you've ever been kicked in the teeth by some Preston in your life and kept walking, help me hit my first ever 10,000 subscribers. You'd be surprised what kind of revenge we can cook up with just a story and a little support. Back in her office, well, former office, Sloane grabbed her box of things. Photos of her dogs, a framed quote from her mother, "Don't get even, get everything," and a flash drive taped under the drawer with a label that just read Clause 12C. She didn't cry, didn't cuss, just walked out through the same glass door she'd opened every morning for a decade and a half. But this time she didn't badge out. She paused, smiled at the receptionist, and said, "Don't bother disabling my login just yet." The kid thought he'd cut the head off a relic, didn't know he just unplugged the power source. The box was still warm from the grueling drive north on Mopac, rattling softly as Sloane set it down in her dining room, right next to the half-dead orchid, and the unopened bottle of Silver Oak Cabernet she'd been saving for a win. This wasn't the win she had in mind, but it would do. She didn't go for the wine. Not yet. Instead, she crossed the living room to a tall, nondescript cabinet no one but her had ever opened. She slid the panel to the side, keyed in a 6-digit code that hadn't changed in 15 years, and waited for the mechanical click. The drawer inside groaned open like it hadn't been touched in a decade, which was only partially true. The documents inside were pristine, archived like sacred scrolls. She flipped past old W-2s, 2 performance reviews from a VP that cried when he got laid off, and a sealed envelope labeled Blake Original. Inside was the contract. Back when Apex Ledger Group was one bad quarter away from bankruptcy, Sloane hadn't just stepped up. She rebuilt half their back-end operations from scratch, wrote the predictive algorithms for their high-frequency trading pipeline in her own damn living room while eating cold takeout from Terry Black's BBQ and dodging creditors. She hadn't asked for a bonus, she'd asked for something smarter. And Preston's father, Garrison Blake, the real CEO, not the sperm recipient in a suit she'd met this morning, was smart enough to give it to her. Clause 12C. It didn't look like much on paper. 3 paragraphs buried between arbitration procedures and standard non-disclosures, but Sloane remembered every word. IP rights to any custom analytical modeling she authored on her own equipment. A 2.5% equity stake if the company hit a certain revenue threshold, which it had 3 years ago, with no payout. The kicker. All executive restructuring decisions must be approved by her signature if she was employed at the time and if her ledger systems were still in use. Check and check. She didn't rage, she didn't pace, she just pulled out her phone, opened the scanner app, and got to work. Scan, save, encrypt. 1 copy to her personal inbox. one to her employment attorney who'd helped her write the damn clause, and one to Vivian Cross, board member since year 7, who once told Sloane over craft cocktails at Zanzibar, "If the boys ever turn on you, send me proof and I'll handle the knives." By the time the attachments hit her sent folder, Sloane was already drafting a bullet point summary of current quantitative models running on the Vance Predictive Ledger, her original algorithmic base. It was still in use. She knew that without checking. They'd only just renamed it Preston Quant a year ago, like that could erase her fingerprints from the ledger entries. She closed the cabinet, locked it again, and took the Cabernet from the table, poured herself half a glass. She didn't toast, she calculated. Tomorrow wouldn't be about proving Preston wrong. It would be about making the entire board remember why she was never someone you could just streamline. Garrison Blake returned to the Austin headquarters on a sweltering Tuesday with a stitched-up gut, a short fuse, and the creeping realization that leaving his son in charge for even a week was like handing a toddler a chainsaw and hoping for lawn art. His assistant, Eleanor, stone-faced, 65, and terrifying, met him at the elevator with a stack of papers and a post-it note that simply said, "You'll want coffee first." The moment he stepped into his office, he saw it. Sloane's scanned contract printed in triplicate, neatly clipped and placed dead center on his mahogany desk like a legal landmine. His heart sank before he even read the header. Clause 12C was circled in red. There was a brief flicker of hope. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe she was just making noise, trying to leverage sympathy on her way out. But then he saw the signature at the bottom. His signature, notarized. The date matched the week after their server farm liquidation crisis. Sloane had pulled the entire firm out of the flames with a quantitative model she built on a laptop older than Preston's last girlfriend. He sank into his chair, stomach nodding again, but this time not from surgery. "Eleanor," he said. She poked her head in, already texted him. "He's coming." Garrison didn't say thank you. He just rubbed his temples and stared at the clause again, reading it like it was a death sentence he'd written himself. And maybe it was. A knock. Preston breezed in, all swagger and Spotify confidence. "Welcome back, old man. Glad to see you survived." Garrison didn't look up. "Did you fire Sloane Vance?" "Yeah, don't worry. Totally legit. HR signed off." Her role's ancient, and frankly, she was kind of dead weight. Preston plopped into the guest chair, leg bouncing. "You're always saying we need to cut costs." "Well, I cut." Garrison looked up slowly, eyes narrowing. "Did you read her contract before you did it?" Preston shrugged. "What for? It's like 100 pages of boomer legalese. She's bluffing. I mean, she emailed the board with some old PDF, probably hoping for a payout. Bitter ex-employee move." Garrison slid the papers across the desk. Preston picked them up like he was being handed a menu. "Clause 12, paragraph C," Garrison said, voice dry as sand. "She has veto rights over structural changes, including terminations. And if her data algorithms are still being used, which they are, firing her without board review constitutes breach." Preston blinked. "Wait, what? That can't be real. That's insane. Why would you give her that?" "Because 15 years ago your father was bleeding money and Sloane wrote a quantitative trading pipeline that saved this firm from folding like a damn lawn chair in a hurricane," Garrison snapped. "That clause is real. So is the equity. So is the IP. And if she presses this, she doesn't just get her job back." "She owns part of your job now." Preston paled. "But I already filed termination. Her severance is processed. Then you better pray she doesn't cash it." For the first time since Preston strutted into the role like it was gifted to him in a Happy Meal, Garrison saw something crack. That twitch behind the eyes. The sound of wheels turning slow, rusty, and terrified. Garrison leaned back, exhaled through his nose. Sloane doesn't make noise unless she's already pulled the trigger. If she's contacted Vivian Cross, he let that hang. They both knew Vivian didn't play. The silence that followed was thick. Preston stood, fists clenching and unclenching, the reality finally dripping through the holes in his designer armor. Garrison tapped the contract. "You didn't fire an employee, Preston. You declared war on the wrong goddamn general." It started small, the kind of hiccups nobody notices until they stack like dirty dishes in a bachelor's sink. On Wednesday, an algorithmic trade execution to Chicago lagged. The institutional client called twice, furious by the third ring. Thursday, 2 private equity ledger entries went missing in the mainframe, just vanished like they'd never existed. Friday, the central data hub routed a multi-million-dollar margin call to a defunct shell account instead of the active portfolio, costing the firm $6,000 in raw compliance penalties and an apology email that read like it had been written by a sleep-deprived intern with a concussion. Each incident on its own manageable, but together they were the exact kind of paper cuts Sloan had spent 15 years cauterizing before anyone felt a sting. Now they bled freely. Meanwhile, the downtown Austin office buzzed with that sick little energy that comes when a storm's coming and you don't know who packed an umbrella. Sloan's name wasn't spoken loudly, but it was everywhere. In the break room, in Slack threads disguised as memes, in whispers over frozen lean cuisines and passive-aggressive post-its. "Did you see the clause?" someone murmured by the high-speed printer. "She had IP rights or something, right? That's like serious. I heard she emailed the board before she even left the parking garage. Wait, Preston fired her? That little golem. My cousin's in legal, they said it might breach contract. Like, breach. Vivian Cross didn't respond to gossip. She didn't have to. The mere fact that she hadn't publicly defended Preston said enough. People noticed. People always noticed when Vivian went quiet, like the forest right before a cougar jumps. And then came the kicker. It was Leo Harris, junior quant turned risk analyst. Soft-spoken, smarter than he let on, and terrified of confrontation. He'd been tasked with reviewing internal data pipeline dependencies before their next high-frequency trading server update. 2 hours into the forensic audit, he found it. A line of ledger execution logic inside their automated portfolio balancing script, adapted from the original VPL Vance predictive ledger. Copyright Vance. He stared at it for a solid minute, then searched the server logs. She hadn't just written the original structure. Her predictive algorithms were the structure. Repackaged, renamed, sure, but the skeleton. The DNA of that beast humming in their quantitative pipeline. All hers. Leo did what any smart junior did in a corporate horror movie. He quietly screenshotted everything, zipped it in a folder labeled just in case, slipped the printout onto his manager's desk with a sticky note that said, "Think we owe Sloan royalties." That sticky note made it 3 desks over by lunch. HR saw it by 3 p.m. Legal by 5. By Monday, Garrison's inbox had 15 different threads with the subject line, "Urgent. Vance IP rights." Sloan never said a word, never tweeted, never posted some vague "God closes a door" status on LinkedIn. She didn't have to. Absence was its own form of presence. Like a missing beam in a house you thought was sound until the roof sagged. No tantrums, no threats, just quiet chaos. And somewhere behind all those flickering Bloomberg terminals and stressed out middle managers praying Preston didn't call another town hall, one truth became colder than fact. Sloan Vance wasn't just a former employee. She was now a loaded gun the firm had tossed onto the boardroom table and dared not pick up. Subject line, Notice of Contract Breach Clause 12 CIP Ownership Review. Sent at 6:02 a.m. just as the downtown building lights flickered on and half the C-suite still had pillow creases on their cheeks. Sloan's timing was always surgical. The email was short. 5 paragraphs, 0 fluff, no angry language, no frothing demands, just precision. Dear board members, on my termination date, I was informed without prior board consultation or approval that my role had been eliminated. As outlined in my employment contract clause 12C, such restructuring actions are subject to approval due to the active deployment of the Vance Predictive Ledger, VPL, quantitative architecture, and associated IP. This termination occurred while said systems remained in core operational use and without formal consent. For your reference, I have attached documentation of IP contributions, active ledger execution algorithms still in live deployment, and a signed copy of the original agreement. While I trust this was an administrative oversight, the legal implications of breach and royalty delinquency compel clarification. I remain available for resolution discussions. Attachments: Vance Original Contract .pdf VPLIP Overview.pdf Quant Routing Excerpt.d OCX. She CC'd no one from HR, no one from Preston's team, just the board. Then she stood up from her kitchen table, poured herself the last of the Cabernet, and started making her avocado toast like it was any other day. Because for Sloan, it was. This was routine. This was what happened when someone mistook silence for surrender. By 8 a.m., the replies began. The first was from Kimberly Sterling, compliance watchdog and notorious hawk. 4 words: "When are you available?" The second from Vivian Cross: "We need to talk soon." At 8:37 a.m., someone blind copied her on an internal thread titled Urgent Review: Termination Protocols plus Royalty Risk Exposure. Sloan didn't reply. She didn't have to. She knew what would happen next. She counted on it. At 9:10 a.m., a quiet panic swept through the top floor. Boardroom doors closed early, schedules cleared. Someone canceled Preston's 10 a.m. vision for the future webinar without telling him. Garrison Blake walked in with a manila folder and a look that said he was about to eat his own mistakes. Legal had already started pulling documentation, reviewing every signature Preston had scrawled since Sloan walked out. NDA updates, vendor renewals, a new partnership with a massive hedge fund built on data modeling still running Vance's algorithms. And that's when they saw it. Not only had Sloan been fired without board consent, Preston had greenlit a system overhaul that quietly duplicated her original algorithmic framework without compensation or attribution. The term willful infringement began floating between inboxes. So did malicious restructuring. One attorney even wrote the phrase, "She's not just owed back pay, she may be owed equity corrections retroactively." Outside the glass walls, Preston smiled for some social media intern's photo op about innovation culture. Inside, a different kind of innovation was unfolding. An unscheduled forensic audit, a flurry of legal memos, and the first whispers of board-level dissatisfaction no PR filter could fix. Sloan still hadn't replied because power doesn't knock twice. It lets itself in when you least expect it, wearing silence like a suit and holding receipts sharp enough to cut careers in half. Preston found out about the private board session the same way he found out about most things lately, by being the last to know in a building his father still technically owned. He'd strolled into the executive lounge mid-morning, caramel oat milk latte in one hand, phone in the other, flipping through LinkedIn influencers like they were fortune cookies. That's when he saw it. Vivian Cross walking into conference room B with Garrison, Kimberly, and the entire legal team in tow. No invite, no heads up, no courtesy loop you in from Eleanor. Eleanor always used to greet him like royalty. She walked right past him this time with a folder marked Vance IP/Clause 12. Something inside Preston shifted. A flicker of something unfamiliar just beneath the teeth-grinding arrogance. It was cold, wet, panic-shaped. He power-walked back to his office, slammed the door harder than he meant to, and dialed Sloan's number. Ring, ring, voicemail. He tried again. Straight to voicemail. Left a message this time. "Hey, Sloan, I think we maybe got off on the wrong foot. Just wanted to talk, maybe figure this out privately. Call me back, okay?" Even he didn't believe it. His voice cracked halfway through privately. 15 minutes later, a reply arrived. Not from Sloan, but from her old autoresponder, still set up on her personal email. "Thank you for your message. I'm currently unavailable. If this is urgent, please contact someone who didn't call me non-essential." Preston slammed his phone down and knocked over a glass paperweight, shattering it into jagged little reminders that he was in fact not in control. Then came the final nail. He stormed down to Quant Ops, breathing like a cartoon bull, demanding Leo, the junior analyst who'd uncovered the ledger tags, to show him the damn system logs. Leo, mid-Diet Coke and visibly shaking, opened a terminal and pulled up the live quantitative script. Preston stared at line after line of algorithmic code, not really understanding what he was seeing until Leo highlighted a tag, copyright S, Vance 5 PL Core Logic v2.4, do not modify without legal clearance. And below that, use of this modeling structure without licensing agreement constitutes breach of IP ownership terms. It was baked in. Not just one tag, hundreds. Watermarked, predictive data, nested algorithms, version logs, all of it traceable. Sloan hadn't just built the system. She'd branded it like cattle. Quiet, legal, unforgiving. "What if we, rewrote the models?" Preston asked, lips twitching. Just reformat it. Strip her tags. Quick fix." Leo blinked, frozen mid-keystroke. "Sir, that's fraud." "Who said anything about fraud? I'm just saying we modernize." "Okay, get creative. Maybe with a bonus." Preston tossed out the word like he'd seen it in a movie where bribes worked. Leo's silence was louder than any whistle. By 4 p.m., Leo had emailed HR, CC'd legal, and attached a transcript of Preston's modernization idea with one simple line at the top. This made me uncomfortable. Please advise. It didn't take long for that to reach Vivian or Garrison or the board session Preston still hadn't been invited to. By 5:15 p.m., Preston's keycard had been quietly downgraded. Not revoked, just adjusted. He didn't notice yet, but he would, because desperation smells like fear. And fear, when it starts to rot, draws attention. The kind that eats empires. Garrison didn't knock. He stood outside Sloane's front door in East Austin longer than any self-respecting CEO should, holding a manila folder like it was a hostage ransom. Dressed not in the crisp suit he wore to battle investors, but in slacks and a windbreaker, like a man who knew this wasn't business anymore. It was cleanup. Sloane opened the door slow. No smile, no welcome, just that surgical stillness she wore like armor. 5 minutes, Garrison said. Then I'll go. She let him in without a word. The house was the same as he remembered. Clean lines, muted tones, nothing flashy. Except the dining table spread with neatly stacked legal docs, case studies, a framed photo of her and her dogs at the lake, and a yellow legal pad covered in handwritten bullet points that looked less like notes and more like a war map. She didn't offer coffee. He didn't ask. I was wrong, Garrison started, eyes low. I never should have let him near that seat. I thought giving him a taste would scare him straight, humble him. I didn't think he'd gut the firm, Sloane finished, voice flat. Destroy the one person who kept it from collapsing 10 times over. Garrison nodded. Yeah, that too. Silence. Sloane didn't blink, didn't sigh, just reached down and slid a folder across the table. Reinstatement offer, she said. Effective immediately, back pay for 6 months. Retroactive equity adjustment to reflect the performance milestones hit using my IP, and a 2-year licensing contract for all current and derivative quantitative systems under my terms. Garrison didn't open it. He just stared at it like it was a loaded pistol. If you don't sign it, Sloane continued, I'll walk into Vantage Capital's downtown office tomorrow at 9 a.m. I've already had craft coffee with their CTO. He knows what I built, knows what I still own, and he's very interested in acquiring licensing rights. Especially now that we both know your board is legally exposed. You'd burn it all? Garrison asked, voice soft, almost pleading. She tilted her head. No, I'd simply charge what it's worth. It hit him then. Sloane hadn't come for revenge. She'd come for balance, for order, for respect. And she'd built her case brick by brick with the same precision she used to rewire his trading infrastructure during the 2008 collapse. You don't want the rollback? He asked cautiously. No, she said, not like it was. But I'll take something better, something cleaner. He nodded, hands trembling slightly as he reached for a pen. I'll handle Preston, Garrison said, almost to himself. He's still my son, but Sloane held up a hand, calm, icy. No, let him face the board first. She leaned back, expression unreadable. Let him learn what it feels like to be declared non-essential by people who actually read the paperwork. Garrison looked up, eyes tired. You always said you didn't believe in revenge, he said. Sloane smiled for the first time. I don't, she said. I believe in consequences. Preston strutted into the boardroom like it was a TED Talk he hadn't rehearsed for but felt confident he could wing. He wore his trademark half-smirk and a blazer tight enough to signal thought leader. His eyes flicked from face to face, looking for a smile. None came. The room was quiet, not tense, not angry, just still, like the space between lightning and thunder. And then he saw her. Sloane sat at the far end of the table, calm, unmoved, a closed folder in front of her, fingers laced like a courtroom witness who already knew the verdict. She didn't look at him, didn't flinch. Preston's smirk faltered. He adjusted his collar and cleared his throat. Morning, everyone. Excited to share some updates. No need, Vivian cut in without looking up from the folder in her lap. We've already had a very enlightening morning. Preston blinked. Sorry. Kimberly, seated beside her, lifted a page. Read aloud, Clause 12C, no structural or leadership changes, including termination or reassignment, shall be executed without the written consent of Ms. Vance if company operations are utilizing intellectual property authored or designed by her during active employment. She paused. Which they were, which they are. Next, the board's legal counsel spoke. Per discovery, 70% of current algorithmic trading operations utilize proprietary structural models built off the Vance predictive ledger. Attempts to alter this data framework would require 6 months and full relicensing clearance. Sloane still said nothing. Garrison sat at the head of the table, eyes forward, hands folded, not defending, not condemning, just watching. Preston laughed. Dry, unconvincing. Okay, but look, we're all on the same team here. Sloane, you could have just talked to me. You didn't need to drag the whole board into it. Sloane finally moved, slowly, calmly. She opened her folder, slid a flash drive across the polished wood. Press play, she said. Her voice was quiet, but razor sharp. Kimberly inserted the drive. The screen behind them flickered on. Footage played. A clean, high-speed walkthrough of the firm's quantitative execution dashboard. Real-time arbitrage routing, automated portfolio balance projections, predictive market delays, every feature humming like a goddamn Tesla engine. At the bottom right corner, barely visible but permanent, was the watermark, powered by S. Vance IP Holdings. A long silence, the kind that makes careers die. Then the CFO spoke. 3 institutional partners have already reached out. 1 is preparing legal action over failure to disclose IP rights in ledger contracts. If we don't resolve this, we're staring down breach litigation, royalty payouts, and license restructuring at scale. Preston's jaw twitched. Okay. So what? You're siding with her over me? No, Vivian said. We're siding with the firm over the liability. Then she turned to Sloane. Ms. Vance, have your terms changed? Sloane nodded once. Only in delivery speed. Garrison cleared his throat. We've reviewed and approved her reinstatement pending board sign-off. Effective immediately, she will resume under her new title, Executive Director of Quantitative Integrity, with independent oversight privileges. The vote passed unanimous, but Sloane didn't reach for the contract. Instead, she stood, adjusted her blazer. I appreciate the offer, she said, but I won't be returning. A ripple of surprise. She met Garrison's eyes. I already took another meeting. Vantage Capital. They made me an offer I'd be a fool to refuse, full licensing autonomy, no Blakes involved. Preston opened his mouth to speak. Sloane cut him off with a glance that hit harder than any scream. Then she gathered her folder, walked to the door, and paused. To whoever replaces me, she said, not looking back. Start by changing the system passwords. I don't trust what's still in his inbox. And with that, she left, calm, complete, untouchable. Preston slumped into a chair, sweat creeping through his designer collar as the board began quietly discussing interim leadership. No one asked his opinion. They never would again. Big thank you, legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive.